I came home from a 2-week work trip to find a structure built on my property. Not a shed, not a fence, a full-framed building. Sitting on my land, without my knowledge, without my permission, and without a single permit bearing my name. And when I walked into the HOA office and asked what was going on, the board president looked me dead in the eyes and said, "That's community property now. You should be grateful we improved your lot. You should be grateful we improved your lot." I want you to hold on to that sentence, because 6 months later, I handed that man a certified letter that made him physically pale, and every brick of that building came down on my terms, not his. Before I get into exactly how this unraveled, if you've ever had an HOA treat your property like it belongs to them, you need to be subscribed to HO Drama Neighbor right now. Hit that button, turn on notifications, because this channel exists for exactly this moment. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare started. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I own a corner lot in a planned HOA community in suburban Ohio. I bought the property in 2019, a single-family home on roughly 1/3 of an acre. The lot has a side strip of land about 18 feet wide that runs along the eastern boundary. It's on my deed, it's in my survey, it's mine. Taxes come to me. Title is in my name, has been since day one. The board president was a man I'll call Walter. Walter had been on that board for going on 9 years. He walked around the neighborhood like he owned the deed to every house. On the street, clipboard guy, measuring tape guy, the kind of person who takes a $300 fine and turns it into a personality trait. In the spring of last year, my company sent me to oversee a project in Seattle. 2 weeks. I arranged for my neighbor's kid to water my plants. I put my mail on hold, and I left. When I came back on a Sunday afternoon, I noticed something immediately. There was a small building, a fully framed, roofed, sided structure, sitting right on that eastern strip of my property. He answered the door in a polo shirt, holding a glass of sweet tea, completely unbothered. He said, and I will never forget this, "Oh, that's the new groundskeeping depot. Board voted on it last month. We needed centralized equipment storage, and your lot had the most practical dead space. You should be grateful we improved your lot." I went home, sat down at my kitchen table, and did not sleep that night. But I didn't panic. I opened my laptop, and I started building a file. The first thing I did was pull my original deed, plain as day. The eastern boundary strip, lot dimensions matching the survey recorded in the county property records. My name, my land. Not a gray area, not an easement, mine. 2 days later, I received a letter from the HOA's property manager. It was almost impressive in its audacity. The letter claimed that the strip of land had been designated as a limited common element under the CC&Rs, that the board had the authority to develop it for community benefit, and that any interference with the structure would result in fines of up to $500 per day. Margaret sent the HOA board a formal cease and desist letter the following morning. It cited Ohio Property Code, the recorded deed, the absence of any easement or plat amendment, and the lack of building permits. It demanded removal of the structure within 15 days. Walter's response came 4 days later. Not from an attorney, from Walter himself on HOA letterhead. He wrote that the board had reviewed their documents, stood by their authority, and that my attorney's letter had been noted. He also added a line that said, "We would remind Mr. My last name." That continued antagonism toward the board may result in additional compliance reviews of his property. I hired a licensed demolition contractor. I pulled the required demolition permit from the county, which was issued without issue because the structure had no building permit on record, and I was the property owner of record. I notified the HOA in writing via certified mail that demolition of the unpermitted encroachment would occur on a specific date. On the morning of the demolition, Walter showed up on the street with 2 other board members. He was furious. He told my contractor to stop. My contractor politely showed him the demolition permit. and pointed out the property lines. Walter called the police. The officer who responded was professional and thorough. He reviewed my deed, the demolition permit, and the property survey that I had brought in a folder specifically for this moment. He spoke with Walter. He came back to me and said, "Sir, this appears to be your property and you have a valid permit. I can't stop a legal demolition." The structure came down in about 4 hours. Clean removal. The concrete footings were broken up and hauled off. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, that strip of land looked exactly like it did before I left for Seattle. 3 weeks later, I was served. The HOA filed a civil lawsuit against me for destruction of association property, claiming damages of $42,000. $42,000 for a shed they built on my land without permission. During discovery, the legal process where both sides exchanged documents and evidence, the HOA had to produce records of the board vote. What those records showed was that the vote had been taken at a special session meeting with only 3 of 5. Board members present, with no notice sent to homeowners as required under Ohio HOA law. Their own minutes destroyed their own case. Margaret also obtained the construction invoices. The HOA had paid a contractor $42,000 using association dues to build an unpermitted structure on private property. She submitted those invoices to the Ohio Secretary of State's HOA division and to the county building department. The settlement terms were dictated by me and my attorney. The HOA dropped their lawsuit entirely. They agreed to pay my attorney's fees, which totaled just over $11,000, and the 3 board members who voted for the construction, including Walter, resigned from the board as a condition of the settlement. I went home, walked out to that eastern strip of my lot, and stood there for a few minutes. Just grass, just my land. Clean, clear, and legally documented 6 ways from Sunday. Walter was counting on intimidation. What he was not counting on was documentation. The HOA had all the aggression. I had all the paperwork. And in the end, paperwork wins every single time. So I want to ask you, what would you have done? Would you have backed down when they threatened $500 a day in fines? Drop it in the comments. Hit that like button. If you are not subscribed to HO Drama Neighbor yet, this is your sign. Subscribe now, because your land is yours, and nobody gets to tell you otherwise.